This afternoon, judges, magistrates and state prosecutors identified amongst the highest recipients of cash bribes in the latest Corruption in Ghana report issued by the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime. We'll tell you more as some judges are already raising concerns that corruption in the judiciary is undermining equity and fairness in our society.
It's draining the public purse, it's creating barriers to economic development, decreasing effectiveness and efficiency of public services, increasing transactional costs.
Hello there, you're watching The Pulse on the JoyNews channel. We're coming to you live from our studios here in Accra. We're also on your digital terrestrial TV because we are free to air. You can catch us live on DSTV channel 421, Go TV channel 144. Also coming up this hour, 9,099,136 Ghana cedis. That's all that's left in the account of the National COVID-19 Trust Fund as of 30th June 2022.
30th June 2022, and that was the height of things. We had actually collected 62,329,941 cedis, 98 pesos. Never forget the pesos.
Stay with us. We'll bring you a breakdown of the expenditure lines of the National COVID-19 Trust. It's all coming up here on The Pulse. And family of late President John Evans Tamils finally open up about what may be the real cause of the death of the president after years of speculation about the demise of Ghana's dead president in the Fourth Republic.
Autopsy report is personal for the family. Is he a family member? What is his business asking for autopsy report? We took the autopsy report from 37 Military Hospital. We went to AMA. Professor was there with a death certificate.
Bring you details of that death certificate. Meanwhile, on the day that would have been his 78th birthday, we hear from his former appointees and also some Ghanaians who look ahead to the 10th anniversary of the demise of the Asumdwe Hene, as he is affectionately called.
Well, I remember his funny comment, I think that's what I remember, and then also he was an educationist, and so he was much interested in the education of the country. I think these two.
For the late president, I remember him to be a very peaceful man.
We have that coming up shortly. My name is Blessed Sogah. The Pulse, as always, is brought to you by Global Communities Digni Lu, Affordable Safe Sanitation. Remember that this afternoon we're streaming live as well on YouTube, and all of our social media handles is at JoyNews on TV. Don't forget that we are JoyNews, independent, fearless and credible. Please stay for details. And this afternoon, judges, magistrates and state prosecutors have been identified among the highest recipients of cash bribes in the Republic of Ghana. This is contained in the latest Corruption in Ghana report issued by the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime. The report estimates that public officers received bribes amounting to some 5 billion Ghana cedis in total. Now, out of this amount, the reports suggest that the largest cash recipients of bribes were paid to Land Commission officers, prosecutors, and also, guess what, judges and magistrates. So let's bring you a breakdown of some of the excerpts contained in that report, and you find portions indicating that there are some large variations in the size of bribes according to the type of public official who receives them. Now, amongst all of the types of public officials for which there was sufficient data, with an average of the Ghanaian cedi equivalent of 1,669, the largest cash bribes were paid to Land Commission officers and prosecutors, judges or magistrates, and their average is totaling some 1,208. And by contrast, much smaller than the average amounts which were paid to health workers who have the average of some 90 to 253 Ghana cedis, and also police officers who are ranging around the average of 220 Ghana cedis. But let's bring you some more dynamics to it. In terms of the average, when it comes to the size of bribes taking, you have that on the screens right now, indicating very clearly that the judges are just following closely the amounts taken allegedly by Land Commission officers. And the figure has been pegged somewhere around 1,208 as compared to 1,666 in terms of the average bribe size. But overall, we know that if you take that list of more than 10 state institutions or places in the public sector, you have the judges coming second to the Lands Commission. We also have the Ghana Immigration Service there and the elected local government representatives, as well as that of the GRA and customs officers. But in terms of our justice delivery, the prosecutors, judges and magistrates are being captured there on the scale, bringing them to second on that role. It's beginning to, in fact, gain the attention of some justices of the Supreme Court, including Yoni Kolendi, who says that corruption in the judiciary is beginning to have an effect on the system as it is undermining equity and fairness in our society. Listen.
Prevailed in our fight against corruption. It is fast draining the public purse, is creating barriers to economic development, decreasing effectiveness and efficiency of public services, increasing transactional costs, undermining equity and fairness in our society, making nonsense of due process and law, eroding the legitimacy of government, and will ultimately bring down our democracy and upset our national security. History will and ought to judge us harshly if we were to bequeath such a future to our children and posterity. That said, I must also say that in Ghana, the word corruption appears to be a word that is often being used without a clear understanding of the nuances involved. Allegations and counter-allegations bordering on corruption have often bedeviled our airwaves and public discourse, and I believe this fuels the perception of corruption in Ghana. I think the National Corruption Survey that is about to be launched today is a verifiable attempt to give stakeholders and the public, for the first time, some scientific basis to validate perceptions on the prevalence or otherwise of corruption in Ghana and some of the sectors that are captured in the survey. Ladies and gentlemen, my understanding is that the formulation and adaptation of the National Anti-Corruption Action Plan as a comprehensive strategy was informed principally by the need to expose and combat corruption and to make it a low-gain and high-risk activity. This, of course, would enhance professionalism, effectiveness, integrity, accountability, transparency, etc. in all aspects of our endeavor to build a Ghana that gives hope to our people. However, we cannot do this successfully if we do not measure corruption with a view to revealing our vulnerabilities and developing the necessary anti-corruption responses. This, to me, is the utility of such an important survey. It will give all of us a wake-up call to appreciate the thinking and sentiments of people on the streets across our country. May I take this opportunity to implore all stakeholders and the public to critically evaluate and reflect on this survey and hopefully accept the results as they are from reputable organizations such as the Commission on Human Rights, the Ghana Statistical Services, and the UNOCD, and to use this in informing our strategies in our effort against this menace.
And the findings are already drawing reactions from a number of stakeholders. Let's bring in now the spokesperson for the Ghana Bar Association, Sogah Kuje, who represents the bar, which is expressing some worry over the trend that we're witnessing. In fact, let me bring you in now, Sogah, if you can hear me. First of all, Justice Kulendi talks about the fact that this should be a wake-up call. You agree?
I agree with him.
Yes,
I agree with him because as a people, I think we are in too much of a hurry. What do I say so? We do many things, especially as young people. We seem not to know ourselves even very well. Everybody is just doing whatever he wants. So instead of following procedure, you want it faster than it should be. We are just leading a very fast life as a nation or as a people. So I agree with you.
But then, if you look at the report, it appears that you're coming second on that index. We're not, by this report, saying that every judge is corrupt. But it appears that the situation is beginning to be entrenched in the system. That's worrying to justice delivery, isn't it? Is it fair to then say probably justice is for sale in Ghana?
Well, I would begin by saying that I'm disappointed, but I'm not surprised because it's a human institution. So there is a likelihood that not everybody will live by the rules. But the point too is that, as I said, people are just in a hurry. You have a matter in court. You trust a lawyer, or even if you are conducting the case yourself, you are in the court because you trust the justice system. Why then do you try to influence? Because I don't think that in many of the cases, demands are made, but rather overtures are made from litigants or their intermediaries to reach the judges, magistrates, and whoever is in charge.
So for you,
I don't think that it's too. I don't know the sample size from which the sample size for conducting this research before the generalizations are being made. But as I said, it's a human institution. So I am not surprised, but I'm disappointed. But I think that as the justice of the Supreme Court said, it's a wake-up call. We need to do a lot more house cleaning. But I think that it should not be limited to only that. I think our values and morals are totally almost gone. That's the problem we have. So it should start from the home. People should get to know that once there are procedures to be observed, in doing something, it should be observed. People should be able to speak their minds. People should be able to criticize. You know, our systems themselves even lack integrity. Why do I say so? You have a typical institution in which a subordinate goes to a boss, almost speaking ill of another subordinate, and the boss is interested in what is being said without investigating. It means that the boss himself lacks integrity. That boils down to the system itself lacking integrity. So I think that we should be bold enough to insist on the right things to be done. But how do we do that? People must be encouraged. If you are afraid to be labeled a too known person, as we say in Ghana, or I don't even know, once you begin to speak tough, they think that you are too known, you are self-conceited. I think people should let go of those ones. Whatever you do, people will talk about it. But ask yourself, what is your purpose? What do you want to be remembered for? A bribe giver, a bribe taker? So I think it boils down to the individual. If you come together, we can do it. Once people begin to insist on the right things being done,
this will be the...
Even those who take the bribe, why don't you call in the police? Because you lack integrity yourself. If you don't lack integrity, somebody approaches you to pay bribe, call in the police. It will not happen again.
But unfortunately, even the police you're going to appears to be the highest on that index in terms of the most corrupt institution. So it's as though the entire justice system needs some cleaning, as you're pointing out. But where do we start from? Should we be focused on the bar or on the bench? Where do we start from?
I think both bar, bench, together with the court users, because some time ago, I think some of the notices are still there. After the announced expose, a number of the notices were put up that, look, justice is not for sale, don't pay bribe and all that. People should be patient. You see, the problem we have is that just as we are in a hurry to make money or to acquire wealth, that is the same way we are in a hurry to do everything. A young lawyer joins the bar. He works as a senior who is driving Mercedes. He doesn't care to find out, senior, how did your first car look like? He's targeting the Mercedes. Of course, the senior
everyone likes a
holds every
Mercedes, isn't it? Everyone likes a Mercedes, isn't it?
You like it, but at your time you have it.
Right.
You cannot go before your time. God is a God of order. If it doesn't reach your turn, don't try to move. Other than that, you collapse. You see, as a nation, I don't think we even know how to calculate wealth. To me, wealth is just asset minus liabilities. You see somebody in a huge car, flashy car, huge house, you think he's made money. Have you cared about his liabilities? You've not. So as lawyers, I think that it behoves seniors to, apart from teaching the law, to at least educate genius and whoever they work with on what they have learned in life. That look, I've come this far because I needed to cross, or I have crossed a number of hurdles. So take your time. One day shall be your turn. And there's a saying at the back that everybody shall have his turn at the back.
The belief is that the judiciary is the fulcrum around which our democracy revolves. And once Ghanaians have that in mind, that the courts are not the last place of resort in terms of disagreement, that could be chaotic for our democracy, don't you think so?
Yeah, not exactly, but as I said, if we all agree that, you see, the courts operate with rules and they follow procedures. You don't go to court today and think that because you are of a particular caliber in society, your case must be heard immediately. You don't do that. What we all have to do is just like driving in traffic. If we should all follow our respective lanes, there shouldn't be traffic in town. But if you go to court and you think that you have influence, so you want to influence the system, these are the kind of things that we'll get. So my appeal is that once you have trust in the judicial system and you have brought a matter to court, why then do you want to influence the system? If you could have resolved your problems, why did you come to court then? So the court users, the judges, the lawyers, should all collaborate. We should all begin to observe procedures so that things will work. If anybody should attempt to bribe you, have the person arrested. In any case, you have been interviewed for a job and you're on a salary. You like the job, that's why you're there. What else do you want? If you didn't like the job, you shouldn't have taken the appointment. And if it's as you do it, if you don't like it, resign.
You were just talking about the expose by investigative journalist Anas Arimia Anas a couple of years back. We've transitioned in terms of leadership in the judiciary. We now have Justice Enini Yeboah. Is it the case that the previous leadership were not able to clean or sanitize the system after those findings?
No, exactly so. As I mentioned, it's a human institution. You can't clean it all entirely. It has to take some time. At least, I believe with the expose, if there were some people actually doing it, they would have taken a backstage for some time before even trying to go, before even trying to do it again, if they should. It's just like chancing upon an accident on the highway. You should definitely slow down for the next 5-10 minutes before you begin to speed again. So it's not as if leadership in the past, present, has not done anything. They are still doing a lot, but it will take some time because negative things are difficult to cure.
I want to do some further analysis with you. Generally, we're just talking about bribery in the judiciary. That's the overall heading that's been given to that. But for you, who is the most corrupt? Is it the judges, the lawyers, or the judicial officers, in your view?
I wouldn't pinpoint any category of persons, but I am sure not many judges will be bold enough to ask you for bribe.
Are you sure about that? Are you sure about that?
Of course, not many judges will be bold enough. Blessed, Blessed is the name, right?
Yeah.
Blessed, taking bribe is a crime. Would you be bold enough to ask for that? Because you might not know who you are dealing with. What if you are bold enough to do that and the person says, I'm a police officer. You have asked me for bribe. This is the bribe. Let's go. That is why I am saying that integrity is all we need to insist on. If you are a person of integrity, you have been interviewed for a job, you've taken up the job, you're on a certain salary, the only thing you should expect is increment in salary. Manage your expectations and manage whatever you have. So with integrity, the moment anybody approaches you or a middleman comes and says that this case is before you or facilitate this for me, and you know that is against your morals and values and principles, what prevents you from calling for the police for the arrest of the person? Forget about the fact that the police themselves are corrupt, but do your duty as a person of integrity.
And I almost lost sight of that, the issue about prosecutors. And that should include the Ghana Police Service, isn't it? These are persons who work on behalf of the state. So if they are included in this report as taking huge sums of money, then it appears that we have a challenge too, that persons who have their rights abused may not have justice anytime soon.
Yes, definitely. I will agree with you. I totally agree with you, because that is not the way the system is set up to be. But we have more or less corrupted the system because we want things faster. It is normal for a police to arrest anybody. I'm a lawyer, but I can be arrested just after this interview. It doesn't mean that I'm guilty. Of course, they will have to do their necessary work investigations and see if I am even a person to be arrested in the first place. So we should allow the system to work. We should understand that it is one step after the other. Once you want to rush, you definitely have problems. So it is not the best for us to have prosecutors being alleged to be taking money from either complainants or accused persons or not. There's a general trend in this country that if you owe somebody owes you money, the moment you place a call to a security officer, the person is invited and is detained. That is not their job. They are not debt collectors. If anybody owes you, go to court and take your money with interest, as the case may be.
So finally, for the Ghana Bar Association, are you picking up any lessons from this report that's beginning to trickle into the society? And what would you expect from both leadership of your group and other stakeholders within the judiciary?
I think that a lot more education must be done so that we redeem our image. It's not all sunk, as far as I'm concerned. I will not say that everything is gone. I think that we just have to go back, do some introspection and reflection. Then we get on course. So we, as leadership of the bar, of course, we are meeting again at our annual conference in September at O, and we discuss matters affecting the profession and the nation. And this is one of the critical issues that I think that members will have to look at. And let us not forget, without the lawyers and the litigants, I don't think that a judge will be corrupted. Because we take the jobs there, and they sit on the cases. Even if they are not making the demands, you try to influence them.
You seem to be defending the judges a lot. Why
no,
so?
Not that, bless. Not that I'm defending judges. What I'm saying is that how many judges in the normal course of things will demand bribe? Maybe 1 out of 100 or 1 out of 1,000, but there's a likelihood that people will try to approach them. That is when they will have to insist on the integrity bit of their call. That, look, I am not that kind of person. I am not selling justice. I'll just determine the case on its merits. And people must accept that if you go to court, it's not football match, there will be a draw. There must be a loser and a winner. That is why the appellate system is there. If you are not happy with the decision you received at the court of first instance, you go up. Unless even sometimes as lawyers, we disagree with the decision of the Supreme Court, but that is the final court. But sometimes the good thing is that because the law permits them to revisit their decisions by turning away from them, if a similar matter comes before them, they can change their position. There are a lot of such cases. So let us be patient as a people. Let us learn to know that success in life is not about material things alone. That is where the problem is.
Well,
everybody wants to lead a fast life in Ghana. Why?
That's a big question you're asking. I guess we'll find some time. We'll find some time to deal with that. But I'm grateful that you've been able to join us this afternoon here on The Pulse. Xavier Kujeb, Public Relations Officer for the Ghana Bar Association. 9,099,136 Ghana cedis. That is the balance in the account of the National COVID-19 Trust Fund as of 30th June 2022. Now, trustees of the fund earlier today have been accounting for donations made towards the fight against the infectious coronavirus. According to them, as of June 2022, the fund had received more than 62 million Ghana cedis and had disbursed more than 80% to individuals and organizations directly and indirectly.
And so, as at 30th June 2022, and that was the height of things, we had actually collected, or we had received 62 62.329. No, 62,329,941 cedis, 98 pesos. Never forget the pesos, they add up. And particularly at the heat of matters, we had also received a whole range of in-kind donations. So as at 30th June 2022, the amount that we have spent on various things, the total amount we have spent, including even administrative costs, is 53,230,805 cedis and 37 pesos. And then we really go through details as to what activities these were spent on. Between April and December, we were able to distribute about 10.25 million cedi worth of PPEs and other materials. When we say PPEs, it's not just this, but it's the gloves and the face shields and so on and so forth. And so we were able to do this across the country. 8 testing centers, 9, all the regional and municipal district hospitals, etc., and 126 CHIPS compounds. We were able to do all that. We gave 8 million cedis to the reopening of educational institutions coordinating committee to purchase PPEs and sanitizing items and gels and things like that to enable the reopening of the tertiary institutions. Out of the blue, we received a passionate appeal letter from a family who were distressed because they didn't have money to pay for the bill of their deceased relative who had died from the COVID-19. And after investigation, we don't just jump on sentiment. We looked into it, and we paid the hospital bill.
Excerpts of the press conference there, but let's get much more into detail in terms of the funding and expenditure of the National COVID-19 Trust Fund. Isaac Ovieje is with our research desk, joins us with details of how the 62 million Ghana cedis has been disbursed. I also need to acknowledge Dr. Ifa, who's the Deputy Country Director for SEND Ghana. Thank you, sir, for your time. But first, let's get the details, a breakdown from Isaac. Isaac, give us updates on more of the fundings and where, of course, we had the expenditure going to in terms of the National COVID-19 Trust Fund.
Blessed. So we know that the donation came in 2 forms. So we have the kinds, and then also we have the cash and then checks, or cash or checks. But we will focus more on cash or checks because we can quantify that easily. And so we know, just like she said, a total of 62.3 million Ghana cedis were received as donation, cash or checks. And then a total of 53.2 million has also been expended. And meaning we are leaving a balance of 9.099 million cedis. And so it simply means that, about 85.4% of the monies we've collected as COVID-19 in the COVID-19 Trust Fund has been expended.
Did they give a period, and I'm sorry for cutting through, but did they give a period as of when and how these funds were expended?
So this report actually covered, as of June 30th, 2022. So right from 2020 when the fund was established to June 30th, 2022. And so as I was saying, it means we've expended about 85.4% of what we received into the COVID-19 trust fund, leaving about just 14.5%
in
the fund. And so I'll go into the details shortly. If you look at the years that the disbursements were made, was right from 2020 to 2022. So if you count the number of line items in the 2020 side, you can count about 13 of them, making it the biggest component. And then also 2021 having about 9 components. And then the last one, the least being 2022 itself, having about 4 components. So let me run you through some of the key expenditure items. So we know the fund had to give an amount of 10.3 million for procurement of PPEs, and they also gave 6.8 million for the COVID-19 private sector fund.
And I guess this is all contained in the document that you're referring to now.
Exactly. So this was supposed to help with the construction of 100-bed, the National Infectious Disease Center in Accra. And remember that project was commissioned on the 24th July 2020, Blessed. And then the NCCE also had a total of 2.5 million to help with logistics. And then Pantan Hospital were given 106,000 as support. Noguchi also received, this all in 2020, Noguchi received 5.57 million Ghana cedis. And the National Reopening of Educational Institutes Coordination Committee also received 8 million cedis.
So we'll be not to catch you, but we'll be going into some more details as we ready that document for our viewers to also follow through. But let me bring in Dr. Ifa at this point. Earlier this year, Sen Ghana issued a statement raising some concerns in your report about the lack of transparency in COVID-19 expenditure. Gradually, it appears that government is tilting towards your feedback and opening up some more on the expenditure. You agree?
Yes, thank you very much.
It appears that we've lost connection to Dr. Ifat there. But Kofi, if you're still with us, let's bring some more details in terms of issues relating to some more amounts that were received. It appears that the
management trust,
the
board of trustees,
Dr. Ifa is back, so let's listen to him then.
Paying heed to our call. So I was making the point that this is exactly what Sen Ghana and other civil society have been calling for. And so just want to first of all commend the board of trustees for the fund for at least paying heed to the call of Sen Ghana and other civil society organizations. It's a show of transparency and accountability in the management of the fund. So that would be my very first comment about it.
And we're learning that about 80% of the amount...
If I have the time...
We're learning that about 80% of the fund already has been expended. Are you surprised about this? Okay.
No, I didn't say... Sorry, I'm interrupted, so I may be breaking a little, but that's fine. So I wouldn't say that I'm surprised about it, because if you look at the report, fortunately, I have the chance to peruse it a little. If you look at it, they've given an extensive breakdown of the expenditures, where each of the donations came from and where it went to. And so I'm not surprised about it, considering that we are looking at almost 2 years from March 2020 when the trust fund was established. I believe it was around March 27 or so, up to now. And so in a span of 2 years, I'm not surprised, roping in as much as 63 million cedis and then spending close to 53. So I'm not surprised about that. The only thing, though, is that considering the fact that it's dwindling, and the board chair actually indicated that now funds are not coming in as much. The fact is that considering that there were no accountability from this all time up to now, this is about 2 years that they are actually giving detailed accounts. And you would expect that in as much as Ghanaians are altruistic and they willingly donated to the fund, the fact is that if I'm donating and you are not really showing me what the fund is being used for, then obviously you don't expect people to donate as much.
Beyond the press conferences,
so my expectation is that I was saying that my expectation is that once now the trustees had accounted for and has clearly shown that they are just left with around roughly 10 million, I think 9.9 million or so in the kitty, maybe that will encourage as many individuals, groups, and corporate bodies to donate costs to the trust fund.
I was just about asking that beyond the issue of the press conferences, are you urging that more and more stakeholder engagements will happen, for instance, with Parliament and some other governing bodies on how the COVID funds were expended?
I believe that is the right thing to do. And indeed, not only with Parliament and not only with government institutions, but the fact is that it's corporate organizations and individuals who are contributing to it. Maybe they are doing it, but we are not aware of. But I would advise that as much as possible, the same corporate organization that they went to get the money, they should also at least account directly to them. But of course, it's important that we have Parliament playing at the oversight role. And then remember when this whole issue came up, we mentioned it to Ministry of Finance to at least show us some details about the trust fund, but they indicated that it's not within their purview to do it. So I would suggest to them, to the trust fund, that as much as possible, they could also liaise with Ministry of Finance, because the fact that they are supposed, Ministry of Finance are supposed to hold some of these funds for us. So that is another suggestion. Let's go to Parliament, account to them. Some would say that we've done this public account already. Coming to the press to account to them. But it's also important that we sit to look at the details. That's one thing I realized. Because in the press conference, they couldn't have given us as much details as they probably would have. But when you have a chance to meet certain critical oversight groupings like Parliament and whatnot, and even engaging civil society directly, I believe that there will be the time, the opportunity to ask certain questions and to see how that could actually be addressed.
So you're expecting the leadership of the trustees to appear before the Parliamentary Select Committee. As been directed by the Speaker already, we understand that a probe is likely to be carried out into this.
Yes, that is exactly what we are calling for. One, we are commending them for the initiative they've taken, but they could go a step further by engaging Parliament. And the fact is that when you do that, you instill confidence in the populace, confidence in as many people who would want to contribute more. But I'm surprised that Ghanaians really, are altruistic. Look at it within the space of if it was even less than 2 years. Now you got 63 million just to support the worthy cause. So people are willing, but they need to really get the sense that yes, there's some accountability as to what they are contributing their monies and in-kind donations to. So I'll call obviously for that.
I thought that would have been the last one, but finally, does this led to the conversation about the private initiative, which the Chief Justice former Chief Justice has pointed to, the fact that there was a private initiative who was then working as the agent on behalf of the National Trust. That's the private sector COVID-19 fund. She says that that's a different initiative from what was commissioned by the president, except that they were working as agents on behalf of the National Trust Fund. Would you expect some probing to that aspect as well?
Well, in fact, personally, that was my understanding, from the beginning, because I remember that was purely the private guys who started this. And that is what led to the building of the ninth edifice at the East Municipal Hospital. That was my understanding. But I think after that also, then when they started this initiative, then the government established the COVID-19 Trust Fund. And so for me, it's good that they work hand in hand, because it's just for the same purpose. That is the little that I can say about it. But as to how the level of engagement between the trust fund and then the private sector initiated fund. That I cannot speak directly to it, but I don't know how they did. But I believe that it's also a good case. Well, if you look into the report, you realize that they support, I mean, the trust fund did support with some money in respect of what the private sector guys did. And so I said that, well, such collaboration could go on. And possibly we can learn from this in the health sector to look at other sectors as well.
Dr. Eva, I'm grateful for your time here on The Pulse. Let me bring you back, Isaac. What more do we need to know about this?
Right, Blazer, so per our checks, we realized that right from 2020 to 2022, the amount of, the number of, expenditure line items have been reducing. So if you pick 2020, for instance, there were about 13 line items that the trust fund had to disburse monies to, and then it dwindled down to 9 in 2021. And then now in 2022, we have just 4 line items. But just like I said, out of the amount that has been received into the coffers of the trust fund, about 85% have already been utilized. And if you go into the details, you actually realize that a chunk of the money was used to purchase PPEs. And just like, it was said at the press conference, PPEs just doesn't necessarily mean just nose masks and other things. So there were so many things that went into the procurement of PPEs. They also had to support a lot in terms of reopening of school. But I also want us to juxtapose this with how much government itself said they expended in total, what the finance ministry actually said. So if you look at support to households, for instance, in 2021, that cost the nation about 1.55 billion Ghana cedis, and health response cost us about 1 billion. Health infrastructure cost us about 600 million. And security operations cost us about 875 million. And we also have COVID-19 supplementary releases accumulating to 104 million Ghana cedis. And so, just like the finance minister said, these funds were outside, the domain of the ministry itself. It was in the coffers of the trust fund. So it was only the trust fund who could actually give this kind of detailed reports that they are given today.
So reconciling the data, do we seem to get some parity in terms of the figures that we're receiving from the finance ministry and from the trust fund?
Well, if you do a comparative analysis, you could realize that what the trust fund itself has spent on certain line items is actually just, a small component of what we spent in total as the finance ministry outlined. The figures for the finance ministry are in billions, and then we have these figures actually in millions. So there's a vast difference between what the finance ministry itself spent, about 12 billion Ghana cedis in total, and then the trust fund just spending about 53 million. So there's a huge difference. And I'm not sure it will even be up to, about 5%.
Interesting. Let me save you that trouble. I'm sure that we'll hear from the Health Committee and the Finance Committee in Parliament in the coming days as they probe further into this issue of the COVID expenditure. Isaac Ofeaje with our research desk. Thank you. Now, the Teacher Trainees Association of Ghana fears of a possible food shortage in the colleges of education as feeding grants remain stagnant despite the persistent rise in the cost of living since 2018. The colleges are paid some 7 cedis daily for 3 square meals for each student. This, the students say, has actually resulted in the reduction in the quantity and also the quality of the food served in the various institutions. Well, fortunately, we've been joined now by the president of the association, Jonathan, who's joining us, raising some concerns of a possible shortage that may hit campus in the coming days. Jonathan, tell us about it. What's your fear really about food on campus? Is it about the size, or you are much more concerned about the funding?
Thank you very much. I think it has to do with the two. If the size and then the funding.
I'm sorry, but is it not the case that you, the teacher trainees, just love, food so much that you can't bear with the government in these trying times? I'm sorry for hurting your feelings, but...
It's not about we liking food, but the fact is that for some time, we know the size of the food that we are fed with. So if it begins to reduce, it tells us that something is happening. And as I speak to you right now, if you go to some of the colleges, what happens is that if they eat rice today, tomorrow they take this, they eat rice. That tells you that something is happening. And our interaction with some management members tells us that it's all happening because they are not able to pay suppliers. Why? Because allowance has not been paid.
So break it down for us. Normally, what happens in terms of the feeding on campus? Do you have that directly coming through the bursaries, or it's deducted from the stipends that you receive at the end of every month?
So this is how it goes. The allowance is 400 cedis. So when it is paid, 200 goes directly to the colleges for feeding.
So if that amount goes there, so it is deducted from the amount you're referring to?
Yes.
So how come that you're complaining about the size? Probably the suggestion is that you do away with portions of your allowances so you could perhaps increase the quality of the food that you have served each time on campus.
No, that will not be the solution. If you say we should do away with a portion of our allowances, I don't understand what it means. I don't know if you are trying to say the 200 that comes to us should be reduced. I don't know if I'm getting it right.
Yeah. So how do we solve the problem? You're not willing to part away with the funding that you have. At least it's your stipend. It's supposed to be used for your upkeep. So the point is, if you're not happy about the quality of food you have, why not part away with it? I guess that's what I was suggesting. But beyond that, what do you feel as the Teacher Trainee Association of Ghana to be the solution to that imminent food crisis that's about to hit you?
So what we are doing is that we are calling on government to as a matter of fact, pay the allowance, because it has been arrears for 7 months now, 2021-2022 academic year. Allowance has been arrears for 7 months. And then level 100s have done with their first semester. They've started the second semester, which they'll be finishing very soon. Level 400s are also done with their first semester, and they are about ending their second semester. And what is making it more complicated is that the level 400s will be graduating very soon, will be leaving the school system very soon. And then the allowance for this academic year have not been paid. So they're calling on government to step up processes to make sure that the allowance is paid so that principals can equally the suppliers. We are seeing decrease in size of the food because suppliers have not been paid and the food stock is going down. There is a reduction in the food stock. That is why the size that the students are fed with keep reducing.
And we're picking up as well that you may be holding a crunch meeting amongst the executives of the Teacher Trainees Association of Ghana. What's necessitating that?
So annually, the teacher trainee delegates from all the 46 colleges of education meets at the point, and then we look at what happens or all that are happening in the country.
Are you still with us, Jonathan? You're just making a point about the meeting that's scheduled to be held in the coming days. If you could just provide some clarity to that.
Yeah, so we meet every year. And then we look at all that is happening in the country as far as teacher education is concerned. And then we take decision, we serve stakeholders what we think should be done.
And what's going to be topical this time around? Is it also about the situation on campus in terms of the food shortage? Is that likely to come up?
Yes, we have a lot on our table. We have issues on teacher trainee allowance, infrastructure deficits in the colleges of education, posting, language barrier are not considered when posting is done. So these are some of the issues that we are going to look at.
What is it about the posting that you have challenges with as an association?
Yes, so this is what happened. You see, whenever posting is done, we've realized that teacher trainees, after graduating, are posted to communities that they cannot even speak the L1, the local languages within that community. They are not able to speak. And the children at the basic level sometimes find it difficult to speak the English language. And if you check our curriculum, it requires that the L1 should be blended with at the lower years, so that the students can actually understand what is being taught. But there's a situation where students, teacher trainees are posted to areas where they can't speak the local language, and the students are also not able to speak the English language at that level, which means that, yes, the curriculum requires that L1 should be taught, but our system is not allowing that to be done, which is creating a gap. And I think that as students, we need to see.
All right, then. We'll have to leave it here. That's Jonathan Junu, National President of the Teacher Trainees Association of Ghana. We're grateful, sir, for your time. And you're welcome back to The Pulse. Family of late President John Evans Atta Mills is beginning to open up about what may be the real cause of the death of the former president after years of speculations about the demise of Ghana's third president in the Fourth Republic. Brother of the late President Samuel Atta Mills, in an exclusive interview with JoyNews, says cyanosis, a health condition the former president developed in 2005, could be part of the complications that led to the death of his brother. Many speculations have been made about circumstances leading to Professor Mills's death. However, in this interview, we're getting a clue of what may be the case.
Anybody who is coming after 10 years to ask for an autopsy report, obviously there must be something wrong with that person. What is his business asking about the autopsy report? Is he a family member? Is he the family head? I'm a blood brother of the president. We are satisfied what killed him. We have a copy of the autopsy report. AMA has a copy of the autopsy report. 37 Military Hospital has a copy of that autopsy report. So what is his business asking this? Look, don't try to divert anything. What is wrong is wrong. What is wrong is wrong. No matter who you are, you cannot touch somebody's grave without informing the family.
But what does the report say if you want to help Ghanaians?
The report doesn't say anything. That they stated what killed him. That was it. They stated what killed him. Why is everybody so much interested in what killed Professor Mills? Providing the autopsy report will not solve any problem.
But most especially, this one was also surrounded with a lot of controversies. People were citing several things that might have led to his death, and that's why I think people are asking for the autopsy. So will it be out of place if you tell the people that this is what happened?
Sir, I was with President John Evans Atta Mills on a daily basis. I was there right before he woke up, and I left only when he fell asleep. All the hospital visits that he went on, I was there with him. All the visits, I was there with him. Now, he was a president, so I wasn't well known, and I liked it that way, because there were so many things that I could do for him that I could walk into anybody's office and get any information because they didn't know who I was. We are satisfied with what killed him. He had had a sinus problem. If anybody cares to know, that was around 2015 or 2005, 2006, around that time. And it was that thing that had kept on for some time. And so he had to go for chemotherapy and he had to go for radiotherapy. And with all those complications, those were all part of it. And we are satisfied. There was no foul play. And anybody who will talk about foul play probably knows something that we don't know.
So this afternoon on The Pulse, we're asking the question, what exactly is this cyanosis disease and how fatal can that health condition be to an individual's health? Let's bring in Dr. Thomas Anaba now, Executive Director for the Africa Center for Health Policy Research and Analysis. Doc, thank you for your time. So we're hearing for the very first time what may be leading to the death of the former president. But for you, you're a health expert, so I guess you understand much more the dynamics relating to sinuses. First of all, help us understand that health condition and how fatal it could be to one's health.
Very much. I think the sinus problem, what the senior brother has told us, that he underwent chemotherapy, certainly means that it wasn't an acute sinusitis, which lasts for about 2 to 3 weeks, and with normal saline and nasal decongestant, it can easily be cleared. We have what we call the chronic sinusitis. That has the same symptoms.
Dr. Namba, it appears we're having some challenges hearing you. If you could just draw a bit closer so we could hear you better. But you were talking about the differences in the types of that condition that you're pointing to us.
Yes, as I was saying, I said chronic sinusitis, like the case of the former president or lead former president, can either be a chronic inflammation that has lasted for more than 6 to 8 weeks, that antibiotics cannot cure, that other treatments cannot cure. But once he started to, it certainly means that it was a type of cancer. Which one, I don't know. So that required him to go in active therapy. And with that, the prognosis is not very, very good, simply because the area in which it's located is very difficult to manage, especially bleeding. And if it is not caught very early and it disseminates to other tissues close to the brain and other organs like the eyes and then the rest, then it can lead to mortality at any given time. So I think this might have been the cause. I can't tell you exactly the type of cancer it is, but we have different type of cancers that can emerge from the sinus.
So how does it? And how does it work on an individual's health? How does it get complicated? Does it bring along other health issues that may further weaken the individual involved?
Passage of air. The person's phonation will change. You see that if you used to speak with a very good voice, he will now be speaking from the nose, and the sound of his speech will look very different from previously. Besides that, it can cause accumulation of byproducts or infection in the sinuses that want to come out and free. Once it can come out, it will cause repeated infection in the nose and all the sinuses. Besides that, it can cause headaches, severe headaches, and he needs to be on very good antibiotics to take care of painkillers to take care of himself. These are some of the major things that it can cause. Tumors too also disseminate. It weakens your immunity at the same time. Chemotherapy also weakens your immunity. So this can lead to you having been exposed to more infection and more infection. So this is what tumor in the sinuses can cause to a human being. It can also deform even the palate, the upper part of your mouth. That it can deform it. It can cause an ulcer there that you can be bleeding from it at any given time.
But how about those who are vulnerable to this kind of condition? Is it mostly affecting persons who speak to large audiences, or what really could be the causative factors?
It could be a mental predisposition. It could be just that you've had those who have chronic sinusitis and they don't care of treating it. It could be that you've got a toothache that has transformed into something and affected it. There are several causes for it. Mainly aging. Aging, you can easily develop any cancer. Every aged person has the propensity to develop a cancer of any type, or even sinusitis, because your body cannot defend your system the way it used to defend. Your mother cells to transform into defense cells are weakened, and at any given time you can get an infection. Repeated infection can also lead to whatever translocation or mutation of the genes and give chance to the tumor to be formed. And if it happens that it forms in your nostrils, then it gives you problems. There are even young people who have developed nasal tumors, sinus tumors, not only elderly, but it's more frequent in the elderly.
And what are we to do to guard against such conditions?
You quickly go to see a doctor, and if the doctor cannot, he sends you to an ENT specialist, the ear, nose, throat specialist, and they will do x-rays, do their investigations to determine what is it. Especially if you are bleeding all the time from your nostrils, they have several tests they can do to arrive at the conclusion of what they did. So the first thing to do is nasal congestion, repeated headaches, we call it migraine. See an ENT specialist to study you carefully to make a quick diagnosis. If it is not a cancer, that is good. If it is, then they quickly see how they can eliminate it before it spreads.
Anyway, we'll have to leave the conversation here, but I'm grateful for your time for that education. That's Dr. Thomas Anaba, Executive Director for the Africa Center for Health Policy Research and Analysis. Well, today would have been the 78th birthday of Professor Mills, affectionately called Asomdwehene. Of course, we know that many remember him for that peaceful nature of his. And in Parliament today, some of his former appointees and also some leading members of the House have been sharing their fond memories of the late president.
As a great sportsperson, Professor Mills championed the cause of hockey in this country. If you go to the Accra Hockey Stadium, no coach will ever speak about hockey and its development without mentioning the name of Professor Mills. It's only the latter day Accra House of Folk fans who hijacked him, but the development of hockey was under the tutelage of Professor Mills. Those of us who had the opportunity to study law also read a lot of materials by the great professor. It was a great shock to the country, and I pray it doesn't happen again, that all presidents live and see how Ghanaians evaluate their tenure as presidents. So we pray Ghanaians live to evaluate President Kufuor's performance, President Mahamad's performance, President Akufo-Addo's performance. It is in good spirit for Ghanaians to be able to evaluate their performances.
During his tenure as president, Ghana recorded its highest GDP growth rate of 14.4%. Ghana also secured its longest sustained single-digit inflation. It is also significant to note that under his stewardship, Ghana secured its first 1 million metric tons of cocoa production. Ghanaian workers still celebrate him for the successful implementation of the single spine pay policy, which was announced in the final days of the presidency of his predecessor, His Excellency John Agyekum Kufuor. He is credited for improving the wages and quality of life of Ghanaian workers and the overall population. Number 6, believe in the youth. The Asomdwehene had an abiding and unflinching faith in the capacity and promise of the Ghanaian youth, even in the face of criticism, with some accusing him of being a coach who loves to fail Team B players. He remained unperturbed and kept an inspiring confidence in the young team he assembled to help him govern. As he told some of us, having lectured for some 3 decades, he better appreciated the dynamism and fresh insights that youthfulness brings, and therefore he will encourage and offer opportunities for young people to transform our society with the verve, dynamism, and courage they possess. Public service of integrity came to him naturally. He was absolutely incorruptible, and throughout his service to Ghana as a lecturer, a tax administrator, vice president, and president, never was he embroiled in any scandal. That was a rare achievement for the extremely sensitive positions he held. He had a strict personal policy about gifts and even sought to extend same in his government by banning the acceptance of gifts, including Christmas hampers, which he considered inducements. It is therefore not surprising that during his tenure as president, independent assessors ranked Ghana high on all integrity indicators.
Also, some Ghanaians had this to say about Professor Mills 10 years after his demise.
Well, I remember his funny comments, I think that's what I remember, and then also he was an educationist, and so he was much interested in the education of the country. I think these two.
For the late president, I remember him to be a very peaceful man, a very humble man, and then a very caring man. Yes, a very peaceful, humble, and a very caring man. That's all I remember about him.
All right, thank you. What I can remember about our late president of his humility. Secondly, his love for everyone. I see his temperament as a phlegmatic, someone who harbors, everybody in heart. Actually, he doesn't have the spirit of vengeance, or let me say, paying someone's back when, with regards to the other governments, has been the ritual that when a new government comes, the new government has to pin the old one and make sure that the life of the members has to be negative. But Atamils always have the spirit of making sure that the Lord becomes the vengeance of everything that humanity, goes through. I love him for his humility. I love him for his calmness. I love him for the peace. The peace idea that he always resonates into the minds of the populace. And for that matter, I think Atamils has been of a kind that nobody can be compared with when it comes to the presidency of Ghana.
Professor Mills and our former president is a good man. So I can remember him that he said that Asunje Hini and a lot of things. So we must remember him any year, every time.
One thing I remember about Atamils is what Asunje Hini. He normally speaks of peace. And it's the first time we have such a man, a God-fearing person to rule this nation, you know. If I could quite remember all the head of state that we have, this man is a bit different, you know. He's a godly person, and he's a man who fears God, and he always seeks for peace, you know. And sadly, as his life was short, I myself are very painful that we lost such a man. You see, it's very good. Anyway, you don't know what happens tomorrow. This life, you don't know what is ahead of you. So what happens to our Atamils, I remember you normally use a certain word with Christ at the storm, Christ in the vessel, I will smile at the storm. That songs of hymns is a song I love so much. And the words in even that song is very powerful. So as for me, I remember that man very well. He has done a lot.
What makes me miss him is he couldn't complete his job up to the stage. But I wish we could get the same president like him to.
And may his soul rest in perfect peace. Now, government is pledging to provide support for the media and journalism training institutions across the country in a bid to boost their capacities in churning top-class practitioners. This follows a revelation that existing salary levels and conditions of service are hampering efforts in recruiting world-class lecturers into these training institutions. This is affecting their ability to expand and scale up their offerings. Manuel Kranting was at the launch of the 50th anniversary celebration of the Department of Communication Studies, University of Ghana, and now reports.
When the subject of celebration is one that holds the university's flag so high, as is in the case of the Department of Communication Studies, it is indeed worth celebrating.
Vice-Chancellor of the University of Ghana, Professor Nanaba Apia Amfo, opening the launch of the Golden Jubilee celebrations of the school's Department of Communications. Established in 1972 as the Institute of Journalism and Communication Studies, the department has nurtured hundreds of renowned professionals spanning several industries, many of them relishing the impact of their training at the department on their careers.
I had some sort of knowledge about advertising, you know, so I just wanted to come to the School of Communication, which other people call mass communication, what I feel, just to expand my knowledge. And indeed, it's proven very, very important, because then and now I can see the difference in terms of how to create concepts for radio and television commercials, and even my newscasting.
That has produced great men and women, and not just in the field of journalism, but also in the field of public relations, advertising, and even in political communication. So it's been an amazing institution, small as it has been. If you look today at the people you can name as the best in our media environment, you would realize that almost all of them have been to the school and are products of the school. If you look at those running advertising, it's either they've been to the school or they've had something to do with the school. And those running political communication, it's the same.
But the emergence of new trends and needs in the 21st century is requiring more to deliver on this mandate. Dr. Abena Enimwa Yeboah Banin is head of Department of Communications at the University of Ghana.
Because it's a general problem affecting all higher education institutions. When you're trying to recruit particularly people who have trained outside the country, if they're in the country, they're looking for jobs here anyway. But those who've trained outside the country, when you're trying to recruit them here, the salaries are not that attractive when they look at what they could make if they got a job out there versus what they are being promised here. And we've seen so many instances where you're recruiting somebody, once they ask about the finances and you tell them, they write you back to tell you, I'm sorry, I can't take up this job. And it's a real challenge.
Executive Director for the Media Foundation for West Africa, Suleiman Abrahima, wants concerted efforts in addressing this challenge.
I think that the conditions of service of university teachers is perhaps the worst. You know, and I have family people who are academics, and sometimes to go through master's, PhD, and come back and earn less than $1,000 as your take-home money is something that is completely appalling. And if steps are not taken, I foresee a future where the quality academics may begin to move.
Our Deputy Information Minister Fatima Abubakar says government is determined to lead efforts in properly resourcing the institution.
So the allocation of resources and everything should be commensurate with the expectation we have of them. If not, they will not be in the position to do much. We've taken that in good faith. I mean, the Director General of GS was there, I was there. If there is any platform that we can advocate for additional allocation of resources, we are all ambassadors. I'm an alumna. We'll be more than excited to do so.
While counting on alumni and partners towards mobilizing for the future, University of Ghana's Department of Communication Studies hopes to continue being a shining example in communications training in West Africa. Manuel Cranting, JoyNews, Accra.
Let's take you elsewhere. Summer in Europe is turning into a living hell as extreme heat strikes most of the continent and devastating fire break in France and Spain, while the UK recorded its hottest ever temperature reading at some 39.1 degrees Celsius. No respite is expected before the end of the week. Joining us from Berlin now is DW correspondent Emmanuel Shays. Thank you for your time. So let's start with the UK. Soaring temperatures. What does this mean for people living in this kind of heat?
It's an unprecedented situation in the UK, with temperatures going above 40 degrees Celsius for the first time in recorded history. Major incidents were declared by firefighters after a fire broke in several regions. For people underground, it means that houses were destroyed even in the capital in East London. Some public transport, such railway services, had to be interrupted. Some people even had to be evacuated. A few were taken to hospital after having inhaled smoke, with authorities urging the public to be extremely vigilant, for example, to not start barbecues in their garden. All this is very uncommon, very unsettling scenes of devastation in England, a country that is used to much milder temperatures even at this time of the year, with the UN warning that even though the weather has cooled down, well, there was worse weather to come because of climate change.
The fire outbreaks in France and Spain as well. But what does the situation look like right now on that front?
Well, indeed, in Western Europe, wildfires scorch entire areas. A majority of them are actually due to either human negligence or caused voluntarily. They are sweeping France, Spain, Portugal, where actually summer fires are not that unusual, in those regions, but they are way more frequent and way more important this time around. In Spain, there were several temperature peaks at 43 degrees. The military has also been drafted in to help firefighters. In France, the country has experienced its biggest wildfires in over 3 decades. There's over 20,000 hectares of the region around Bordeaux in southwestern France that have been absolutely ravaged, with almost 40,000 people evacuated from their homes.
But as we speak, you are in Germany. How does the country plan to tackle some of these events that we're witnessing?
Of Germany here as well has recorded its hottest day ever and is also on high alert for fires. The country counts many wooden areas, mountains, forests, but beyond the immediate danger of fire those next days, there's also the pressing issue on how countries like Germany will tackle climate change. We have Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock herself coming from the Green Party saying that climate change is the biggest security threat for people not only here in Germany but around the world. And she also said that renewable energies are the way to go. They are the best security guarantee for becoming independent on fossil energy. So Germany, even if it's bringing more coal-fired power plant back online as a response to decreasing its dependency on Russian gas, well, Germany is aiming at developing those renewable energies as quickly as possible.
Emmanuel Shays with our partners DW, thank you for your time. For those of you who enjoy watching Joy News, there's an exciting package coming your way. We'll tell you right after this short break. Please stay. But that's all we have for you here on The Pulse. My name is Blessed Sogah. Don't forget to log on to myjoyonline.com. We have updates for you.